All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of a special edition, the Monday night show. We've got the two-gamer is back. We're going to break down both games as a two-game slate perspective. Got Hoop Title here with me as always. And good news, Hoopster, it's no longer Sunday, it's Monday, but it is still week 7, so we can still get lucky here. We'll bring it back to you first. What's going on, my friend? How you doing?
Yeah, I love these two-game Monday night slates. I mean, been pretty close the last couple, so hoping to get to the finish line here tonight. Week 7 main slate, pretty interesting. I mean, I know you don't like talking about your play all that much, but I mean, I'd say at one point probably favored, I'd say, to win the $100 milli, at least a coin flip to win. I know you love the coin flips, and I mean, at the worst, probably a coin flip to win the $100 milli. I mean, just had a phenomenal team that was just working its way up the leaderboard, and I'd say like complete stall at the end, like complete, like worse than, I don't even know how it's possible how quickly this team just hit the brakes, because had the right game scripts, and it didn't go your way. I mean, if you want to elaborate on it more, you can, but a hell of a team, good run, and it's coming soon.
Yeah, the coin flip one's good. I have a new term I coined with Nades on the Takedown Breakdown. Stilted, when you are still tilted the next day, which is very rare for me. I am definitely a nobody cares, work harder, move on guy, but only human. So certainly had some emotions surrounding that. Not sad ones like you would think, more angry, but just annoyed with the run out. Like you said, it was a perfect spot, perfect run out. Couldn't even just get the live final seat to join some of my guys down in Nashville, but we'll keep working away. It's a new day. Title. Bring you in, man. Crazy slate yesterday. Obviously, all the injuries. We finally got one of those where it's like the perfect lineup is guys that nobody played, but all had good games. So what was your thoughts on the slate? And then we'll dive in to the two-gamer.
Never wearing a backwards hat ever again on the show. That was the worst main slate of all time. I mean, oh my gosh. Like, I'm like a point out from like hitting all cash games with Jaden Daniels, with Juju. It was on and on. I mean, it was brutal. It wasn't as brutal as your stuff, Tambo. I mean, I got dusted, lost a lot of money. My pocket's a little lighter, but hey, no better day to get it back than two games, because we have two showdowns, 2-game slate. FanDuel has good prizes. And actually one really good football game. I mean, your Ravens and the Buccaneers, that should be an awesome game at 50. We know where most people are going on a 2-game slate too. They want to play that game. If you want to get different, we have a 1-point spread in Arizona. Some options there as well. So yeah, ready to get some back today.
Yeah, I think it's a good slate too. And that's the nice thing about DFS. You always do a good job, Title, of putting things into perspective. Somebody's always got it worse. Somebody's always got it better. Live within your means, play your stuff, be happy, and be thankful. We get to come back, do it all again today. Thanks to you out there for always supporting. Appreciate it. The Discord was all behind me yesterday, rooting me in, trying to get me home. So that was awesome. But yeah, hit the like on the way in. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are going to bring up the stone to break down this two-gamer. We got NBA coming back tomorrow. The Nation has got you covered. We got the Stone coming up, brand new this year. Our guy Rio's heading it up. He's got everything under control. Got some new help with our guy BJ, shipping it into the MLB streets, doing the MLB Showdown for the World Series. He'll be jumping over to NBA Title, getting in there with the shows, hosting the cash games, all that and more. And our guy Hamwich on the FanDuel side, and everybody else filling in here. Their Nades might even pop into the mix, Hoop, myself, etc. So should be a good NBA season starting tomorrow. But we're here to talk NFL. Go Collect, Philly Phantom, Baddest, Diz, Illini, Nades himself, Tweezy, always in the booth. Sean Sullivan, welcome back to the Nation. Saw you get back in there today. Shout out to Uncle Nick, Beetlebane, my guy Kenny, lots of good dudes and good people, men and women, both in the chat. And then my guy Justin Sports. Yeah, let's chop it up again. That was another thing, by the way. No more complaints after this, I promise. Insult to injury. I did not watch the Sunday Night Football game, made my teams, went to bed, woke up at 2:30 in the morning to check my phone. 17th place with a 3-way chop in Showdown. First place, 16-way chop. Yes, the third time this season I've had the second best team in Showdown for almost 6 figures. Last night would have been a big one. But I digress.
Okay. One point not related to like DFS, because at the gym and I was watching on TV and they were talking about Aaron Rodgers and whether or not he's dust. And I wanted to get titles, official thoughts on that, because it has not looked good with your boy, even with Devontae. What do you think? I mean, they're what, 2-5 now?
I'll admit, I was with Tambo too. I fell asleep, I think, with like
bad.
8 minutes left.
Actually, for some reason, my ass watched it. Like I stayed up and watched it, unfortunately.
Yeah, from everything I've heard, from everything I was watching, yeah, it looks like he's pretty dusty.
Like 3 balls like batted down, like it's just uncared. I mean, it might just be over for him. Yeah, it hasn't looked good.
Yeah, I saw the Garrett Wilson, like the interception when one hit his chest, and
yeah, that's nothing you can do there.
Other than that, though, yeah, I mean, there's Breece Hall, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson. You can't have any, and a good defense.
Yeah, right.
Yesterday, so there's no.
I don't know how good their defense is, but I mean, it's supposed to be good. I mean, I guess he's probably making it a little more difficult for him with the turnovers and whatnot. But yeah, it's hasn't been good for your boy there.
Father Time's undefeated, unfortunately, man.
I can attest to that.
What about LeBron James? Speaking of NBA back tomorrow, LeBron is the one that just seems to keep on rolling. I just got a thing about LeBron James. And Myles Garrett calls out those who booed Deshaun Watson's injury yesterday. So
the good thing, the thing with LeBron, he can spend all the money in the world on his body, but he also during the regular season plays 50% on defense and damn near 50% on offense until it mattered. Which props to him. It's what's best for the team.
Taking care of his body. I mean, that's the main thing. You take care of your body, you can extend things a little longer.
Yeah. Bring back Cobb. Bring back Eddie Lacy. The mix.
Cobb could do it. Cobb could definitely do it.
Cobb, Mercedes Lewis, grab all of his boys.
The boys back.
All right, we're going to dive in. We're going to go to the Stone. If you're not a member, just see it here on the site. Go NFL, the Stone. It's there. We got the 2-gamer up. We also got the 1-gamer that we're covering is going to be the featured slate over on DraftKings. So the later game, we'll talk about that more when we get there. NBA, like I mentioned, all coming back. The Showdown projections and ownership. We update game by game, slate by slate, game set by game set, however you want to put it. It's right till the end of the night. We're all over it. In the Discord, some sites, $89 for NBA per month. You can do $85 a month. It gets you NFL, college football, PGA still rolling in the swing season, NBA back tomorrow, NHL just started up, MMA, NASCAR, and the playoffs. I mean, World Series now, almost there for the MLB, rounding out the other series, but still, it's rounding out. But you'll still get 7 major sports, and 6 of them we have the optimizer for, Shiptimizer we call it, and NBA is included in that. So definitely if you want to get in, go right to the site. You just one-click it and you're in. We're going to start on the Stone. And Hoop, give me your grand scheme overview before we get into this, because 2 games, Title mentioned it. The Ravens at the Buccaneers, super excited for that game. Could be, I think it's going to be the most popular and solid back and forth. Yeah. But the second game's not bad either. So talk to us about these ones.
Yeah, I mean, the big total in that first one sitting right around, 50.5 or 51, and a lot of people are going to want to go there. I mean, 2 quarterbacks that have played really well all season. Obviously, Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield has been a fantasy stud, essentially, at the quarterback position this year. A lot of people are going to want to go to this game outside of the Bucs running backs, because it's never good when a team comes out and says, yeah, we're riding the hot hand with 3 dudes. Which will be interesting for the slate, which we'll talk through. But like Godwin's going to be very popular. Evans, Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry. Everyone's going to come to this game. I think the interesting plays, you can take a look at some of these Cardinals guys. We'll talk about like Marvin Harrison and even maybe like Trey McBride. I don't know. We'll go through it all. But like the Chargers have been a disaster for DFS purposes outside of Dobbins. Dobbins, I'm guessing, I haven't really looked that deep. The highest owned guy on the slate, I'd assume, got like 25 carries or something last game. So he'll be very popular. But the rest of this game, I'm curious to see when we break it down. I'm pretty open in terms of what I'm going to do on the slate. And again, that's why I really like doing these shows, because come in with the open mind and kind of change some perceived notions that I may have. And excited to break it all down. But again, that first game is going to be the one that a lot of people go to.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I was going to talk about too. I'll keep it to you, Title, for the same thoughts, just because the chat's talking about it. And I think one sec, I'll bring you back up later, Billy. But the Philly Phantom, you're looking at the site, AZ stacks to the moon. It's the opposite, man. That's the defense versus the position. You can also see it here on the Stone. The ranks for Arizona, very bad. It would be Chargers stacks to the moon, which will be the lowest owned quarterback on the slate, Justin Herbert, when you've got Baker, Lamar in that first game. And even if people are getting outside of that, it's going to be Kyler Murray. So, Title, I'll kick it to you, just your grand scheme overview on these two games, any two-game strategy, anything you want to talk about when it comes to that.
And this slate specific, it's the running back room that stands out the most because 4 teams, usually 4 starting running backs. But as Hoop mentioned, it's not great when a team comes out and says all 3 running backs will get a series early on, or at least touches early on, and then ride the hot hand. But you can flip it where that could be great for Millie Maker type stuff on a 2-game slate because no one's going to, not nobody, you can see a projected ownership. We might even be hot on some of these guys. It's going to be hard to pick which one you feel comfortable with, which will lead J.K. Dobbins being very, very popular, Derrick Henry being popular, James Conner being very, very popular. If you don't play Dobbins and Conner at all in the lineup, you play Henry and pick another guy, that'll make you different right away. I do think the stacking, Lamar, Baker will be the highest owned stacks. People are going to want to go to that game. But I will say, Charger stuff, individual pieces outside of Herbert are getting a good bit of ownership because, A, we play a salary-based game. They're really cheap. Dobbins, for obvious reasons, workhorse back. I will say Vidal, I do expect the rookie to be mixed in a little bit. Had a nice touchdown catch on the sideline last week. Probably will be the number 2 throughout the year. So don't mind if you want to take shots on him. You get leverage. But it's mainly the Chargers receivers and even Disley as a punt tight end because they're without Quentin Johnston, which – I mean, he's been okay this year, but he runs a lot of routes on the field. Him being out opens up Semi Fioco, wide receiver 3 for very cheap. Ladd McConkey will be one of the most popular plays on the slate. Solid target share. Herbert's number 1, doesn't break the bank. And Joshua Palmer as well. So if you want to play Lamar, if you want to play Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, etc., you need some value. And I do think a lot of people go to the Chargers for value. So, initial thoughts is people want game 1 and then Chargers side. So it feels like the Cardinals are the most low-ish owned stuff, like Wilson, Harrison, Dortch. McBride will get some, Kyler will get some, but mainly the receivers on the cards, I think, get overlooked a bit.
Yeah, I threw this up there. All you Sim bros think I don't do both. I'm all around the streets. I know what's going on. Sim, Feoko, he's showing up everywhere. You guys think you got your sneaky play? People will be on that with you. Don't worry. He's 3K. He opens up a lot. I could see it there. We'll see how the slate goes otherwise. But Philly Phantom was just talking about earlier, like we have the DVP rankings over at the site too. All the Arizona stuff is obviously very bad. So the challenge I think people have, and Hoop, I'll kick it back to you to start with this first game, Ravens-Bucs. But before we do, just saying with everything you heard on the second game now and seeing that stuff, it's just, I think, because people find it harder to stack the Chargers side, even though they know, what you would do, Herbert with 2 people. It's just, who's it going to be with? And I think people are just more happy to play the running backs on both sides of that game.
Yeah, I mean, just the overarching point here with like the quarterback position, then I'll get into that game specifically, like the Justin Herbert thing. Yeah, he's going to be like the lowest owned quarterback, but he's still getting a decent chunk of ownership. Like he's still getting probably 15 to 20%, probably 15 to 18%, somewhere in that range when it's all said and done. So, like if you take a stance against Justin Herbert and say you're just like fading him, and that's the right move, like you're like the whole goal is eliminating potential teams to compete with you. And if Justin Herbert teams are dead, like you're eliminating like 15 to 18% of the field. And just looking at Justin Herbert's fantasy points, and this is definitely one of the better spots I would say for him, but the dude has not had more than 13.68 DraftKings points this season. 10, 13, 9, 11, 13. Like that ain't doing it on this slate. Could this be the game where Herbert goes off? Sure, maybe, but like they don't want Herbert to go off in games. They don't want him. They want to win games 20 to 17 or 17 to 14. And they want Dobbins to have, they want the running backs to get 30 touches, 30 carries. So I know people will make the case that Herbert's going to be the lowest owned, and he's the guy. But I'm considering like not playing Herbert. If you guys want to touch on that, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think it's good. You talk about all the time. That could be the rake, right? Just because if he is 15%, I mean, if everyone's playing him, you think those are all dead. How do you get leverage on the guys you do want leverage on? Get overweight, and that's the way to do it. So I got no problem with that. I think Title already touched on the running back rooms being interesting, and this is definitely a conversation as well. Like the Ravens just not giving it up against the run, the A rating you see right there on the stone, but the F against the pass. I think the Bucs know that. I don't see any reason. Obviously, there's going to be running. They want to try and keep Lamar off the field. Are they going to be the first team to figure it out and find their way through that rush defense? I don't know. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's very interesting because that's the position that we talked about where the Bucs said they're going to use all three guys, hot hand. Like, that's not what you want. Now, it's a 2-game slate, so you might have to consider some. If it's a full slate, like, these guys are probably like 0% owned, every single one of these running backs. If we're talking a 10-game slate, even like a 5-game slate, like, you're not even going to consider any of those running backs. But it's a 2-game slate, so you got to kind of look at it. I mean, if you are, I mean, I guess they're all kind of like pass catchers, so it is difficult. And I am kind of surprised, despite that talk, that they're still showing up with some ownership. Like, Rachaad White, we're showing 20%, Bucky 16%. We don't have the other dude's not on there. I mean,
Sean Tucker's not up here yet, but a couple notes on that. Just one is, this is the mid version. I didn't want, so one thing we're showing it off just to show you guys what it's all about and why it's the best tool, but no optimals for anyone. So I'm leaving that out. Hoop, if you pull it up, or title on your side, you'll be able to see it, but for the people, they won't. And then there is just huge ownership going to Dobbins, James Conner, Derrick Henry. Obviously, they're eating up the majority of it.
Yeah, but I mean, those guys are still going to get some sort of ownership in like a trio, essentially, which is somewhat interesting. But this is the game everyone wants to go to. The Ravens, Bucs, there's no doubt about it. The higher total and more, I'd say, knowing offenses. Like, we know what these offenses are all about. Like, the Cardinal stuff, it's a little hard to predict at times. Chargers, very difficult to predict. On the Ravens side, it's, Lamar, Zay Flowers coming off a massive game, and then Mark Andrews finally got something going for the first time all season, where he had, what was it, like, it wasn't anything huge, but it was, I mean, he was doing absolutely nothing. What did he get? 3 for 66 and a touchdown. The week before that was 4 for 55. Like, are they kind of reestablishing that connection a little bit? So you can throw in Bateman as well, cheap wide receiver at 43. Derrick Henry at 8K. Like, the Ravens side, you know what you're getting. I'm sure people will ask, oh, can you play Lamar with Derrick Henry? Like, it's a 2-game slate. There's going to be like not many scenarios where I say you can't do that. You can basically do just about anything on a 2-game slate, leaving salary, odd pairings, quarterback with running back. Like I talked about, you can do a variety of things and get away with it. We've seen weird lineups win these 2-game slates. So you don't need to, come up with all these rules and exclusions and things like that. I mean, a lot of things are open and available for this 2-game slate. On the Bucs side, Baker Mayfield has been, I'd say, borderline awesome. I mean, really good for fantasy, at least. 31, 23, 32, one stinker against Denver, 20, and then 30. I mean, it's got to be top 5 in terms of DFS quarterbacks this season. Great connection with Godwin, great connection with Evans, great connection with Otten. The one interesting play, though, I think is Sterling Shepard. It appears that he may be taking over like that wide receiver 3 spot with McMillan. And McMillan was a guy early on. I know McMillan got hurt, but even last game where McMillan was in, I think it was like only 18 routes that he ran. And Sterling Shepard was in there for like 75% of the snaps. So it seems like it could be Shepard over McMillan. I mean, if you're playing the 150, big contest, like I don't hate including McMillan, but it appears Shepard's the guy, and he's only coming in. We're showing like 6%. So wide receiver 3 on a team, they're probably going to have to pass it, like I said. I mean, or like you said, Tambo, the Ravens very good against the run, very bad against the pass. Buccaneers are way more efficient when they're passing the football. So a lot of stuff just lines up, I think, perfectly for this game to be the game. Now, all the ownership is following as well. I mean, in that second game, everyone wants to go to the running backs. They want to go to Dobbins. They want to go to Conner. And then this Lad McConkey dude is coming in with high ownership as well. But this is a game that everyone wants to go to. So, you can always do weird things, overstack it a ton. Like let's say you think that the Chargers dominate and it's all Dobbins. Maybe play Dobbins and Chargers defense and then just load up on this game, get as many pieces as you possibly can. So yeah, kind of where I'm at. And I'm going to play all these guys, to be honest. Like I'm going to, yes, the field's going to be heavy on this game. I'm going to be heavier than the field on this game when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and I forgot too, with the two gamers, we typically go position by position. So maybe I'll flip it to Title. He's been quiet for a minute. I haven't let him jump in too much. Maybe
it's easier. Let's just go when Title goes. Let's just start with the quarterbacks. It is actually
that's what I'm saying. I'm going to kick him to do to quarterbacks, and then I'll finish out thoughts on it. And then if you have more, you can add him. If not, go to running back. That's the easiest way. Plus, it helps apply it to the showdown slate as well. If you're playing showdown, to know sort of what you're doing there. So, Title, go ahead, take us through the quarterbacks, just how you're seeing it. We already talked a little about the Justin Herbert stuff. Go ahead.
Looking at, I got a question to throw back before I do. Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. We have Kyler projected for about 5% higher owned. How do you think that comes in? Pretty similar? You think Kyler's higher owned? Because with how good Baker's been this year and that total, like I think it feels to me like why wouldn't people go Baker, Godwin, Evans, Sterling, etc. And that's important for me because if Baker's number 3, I love Baker. If Kyler's a decent bit lower owned than Baker and he's the number 3 quarterback, I have a lot of interest in Kyler for his upside. So any thoughts on the ownership?
Yeah, I'll take that because I was interested in that as well. So I'm glad you asked. And I just kind of looked around just to see if this was like an outlier thing, but a lot of sites have this same thing where it's Kyler over Baker. And I like to see that. I actually really, really like to see that because I like the Baker stuff like way, way more. And if he's going to be even a little bit lower, it's easier to gain some leverage. So I hope that does hold true. At the end of the day, I personally think it probably ends up being pretty similar, though.
Yeah, I'll take the other side of it, which is I'm always pretty straight up, and it's going to flip 100%. It's not going to be that way, and we'll get our ownership dialed in the closer we get to lock. I know it's like what the industry is doing. The industry it's tough. It's really tough in these ownership streets for NFL, and it has been since Sims came into play, and people are able to push the needle with that and thinking that is the be-all, end-all, so they have to go that route. And I've built a ton early on. I've used optimizers this morning, looked at ours, trying to get a feel for what the industry's up to. And I think for sure Baker's going to come in higher owned than Kyler Murray. It's no question. I think it'll be 5% or more higher owned when it's all said and done. Too, it's just way easier to build. And when people this is what makes no sense to what we're seeing right now with the ownership is if Godwin's going to be 55, Evans, I believe 30% Otten. All of that. People just don't leave that the other way. And I know everyone thinks it's just going to be Lamar and those guys. It's not. People are going to put Baker in there as well. So go ahead, Title.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to hear that. And I think your last point, because of the Godwin, Evans, Cade Otten is a very solid price tight end. Like McBride's great, but he's expensive. And with the addition of Zay Jones coming back this week, it makes like the Greg Dortch, Zay Jones stuff a little dicey. Whereas, so you have Harrison, Michael Wilson, sure. Marvin Harrison's expensive. And there's only limited running backs if you're not playing the Tampa guys, Henry, Dobbins, and James Conner, where you're spending a little bit there. So it feels a little more uncomfortable, I think, for people to go Kyler stuff. The thing is, Kyler always has 80-plus rushing upside on the ground and can run one in. So you can Kyler mini stack with Michael Wilson, mini stack him with Trey McBride. If you do that and you don't play any James Conner, of course, there's, like Hoop said, very little rules I would make on a 2-game slate. You can pretty much do anything. But if you want all the leverage, James Conner, how does he bust today? Kyler Murray does everything, whether he scores on the ground, he throws them in. James Conner, over 50% owned. Figure out 2 other running backs. Maybe you just go Henry, Dobbins there and get a lot of leverage. So definitely going to be playing the Kyler stuff. He has a lot of upside. You see the matchup isn't great, but is the 3rd highest quarterback on the slate. Him, Marvin Harrison, Wilson, McBride, easy pass catchers there. And again, could just skinny stack because of his rushing upside. Lamar, I don't have really too much to add. Like I see people in Discord, if I'm playing 20, do I lock them? Do I just full fade them? You don't need to do either. Like each individual lineup can tell a story. If I had to pick one, fade them or lock them, I'm probably fading them. If I had to pick, I would take a shot that Baker, Kyler, and Herbert, one of those 3 get there at decent bit lower ownership. But I like Lamar a lot because Andrew's likely right there, those 2 alone. You have to make a decision. You can play both, I guess. I don't personally love it. I prefer likely. We'll get there when I get to tight end for the snap share. But you have those 2 decisions. You have Zay, you have Bateman, you have Aguilar. You can throw Justice Hill in a Lamar stack. You can skinny stack Lamar because of his rushing upside like we talked about. So Lamar and Kyler, it's fun. Whereas Baker, you play him, and I like him. But what? Everyone's going to play at least 2 of Godwin's, Evans, Otton, and Sterling Shepard, it feels. Like Sterling Shepard, what Hoop said, very good point, we get to receiver. He is the number 3. He stepped over McMillan. But almost everyone feels like they will go at least Godwin, Evans, probably throw Otton because it's so cheap. And then you're playing 2v2s, 3v3s off of Baker Mayfield. And the last guy I get to Herbert. So Baker's 3. It's Lamar and Kyler for sure. And the Herbert stuff, yeah, I'm kind of torn. I can totally see maybe it's Will Levis in the back of my head burying me on a 2-game slate. Like, why did I just burn money with this guy? But when it works, we saw like DeVito last year on the 2-game winner who's absolutely cheeks. Herbert's not cheeks. They could throw the ball a little. They threw it a decent amount last week before they got up a lot. And his pass catchers are popular and they're cheap. Like, Ladd McConkey is going to be one of the highest owned receivers. Joshua Palmer is now wide receiver 2 without Quentin Johnston. Semi Fioco, like you said, he's going to get ownership at 3K and 3 receiver sets. Will Disley, there's no Hayden Hurst, a very cheap punt tight end. So all of the individual pieces will get ownership, but people aren't really going I shouldn't say that, 15%. So people will be, I don't know, man. I think I'm going to be playing and probably donating money with Herbert today as well. But everyone's going to go. A lot of people like that first game. That second game, just going more so that game than the first will make you way, way different. If I do go the first game, I like overstacking. And I think there's another slate where you can leave 2K on the slate in salary. I think it is pretty soft that way. Drop Ladd McConkey to Fioco. Maybe there's a better example there. Marvin Harrison down to Michael Wilson. Something like that. So I rank Kyler and Lamar, Gap, Baker, Herbert. And again, I'm a little worried about, I guess I'll throw it to you on this, Tambo. Are you a little worried about how to play, getting different within the Baker stuff? Because there only feels so many ways to go with it.
Yeah, not really, because I already got it, so I'll lay it out now that you're flipping it, because I think that's perfect way you put it. I think what everyone's doing with this game is they are going to it, like we know, that's the obvious. Got to look to the next level. Okay, and the next level is they're overstacking it. Okay, what's that look like? Baker, Godwin, Evans, Otton, one of Zay. Oh, I'm being different because I'm playing Bateman instead of Zay. Now, if you're playing Bateman instead of Zay and leaving all that money, yeah, now you're a little bit different. But I think the bigger way is to, when I overstack this game, I think you overstack a side. So I think I'm going to go like Baker, Godwin, Evans, Shepard, Otton, and the Tampa Bay defense. And then maybe fill in some pieces from the other game. No Ravens at all, or one. And then the other way you can flip it is like a Lamar with 2 tight ends. You could play Andrews and Likely. You could play Lamar, Zay, Bateman, Aguilar, and pick a tight end. And pick one of, Mike Evans or Otton as a second tight end, and then fill in the expensive pieces from the other game, like your J.K. Dobbins with a Marvin Harrison secondary stack. So while I'm overstacking the first game in many spots, it's how you overstack it. It's not necessarily the way that everybody else is doing it, because I think that makes the most sense, just based on the slate, what we have at hand. By the way, too, the chat, you got to get it. Morris, our guy, you're on Stat Muse. Got 2 of those L's go to Flacco, my friend. It's 22-1. Back in October 2018, they try and give him these 2 L's, where one game, I think he literally played a snap after they didn't get the job done, so they put him in to give him some gear. But it's 22-1 against NFC teams. I expect Lamar to be involved, and there's tons of different ways you can play him. The chat was talking earlier about naked. I prefer on 2-game slates to get him in there with people because I want to get all of it. But easily could just play him with one. You can go Lamar with just Zay and then fill it out with Chargers, Cardinals pieces, and some Tampa guys that fit in. So I like that. The other thing is, someone said it too, and I was going to bring that up. Herbert has been horrible, and I'm not giving him any credit. This is all to do with it being a 2-game slate. Like, literally anything could happen. So at Hoop's point was a great one earlier. I love that call. If you just want to be out on the guy, it's definitely a way to get leverage. If he's not the guy, it's almost like the rake was paid, et cetera, et cetera. But he really hasn't got the good matchups. And so finally gets a good one. I don't know if that's going to mean anything, but in Arizona, in the Dome, lots of opportunity and easy to stack and then fill in really expensive pieces around it. Think about this too. Baker lineups more likely with Derrick Henry, not as many Lamar with Henrys because they do typically eat each other's lunch, And so setting it up in a little bit of a different way would be to go to that. Like, you don't have to go crazy, but just Herbert with a couple guys, and then get like your Derrick Henry, Harrison Jr. in for the Cardinals. Like you can get some more expensive guys that aren't Godwin, Evans, Zay, the 3 guys that we know are just going to be off the chart. And maybe it's not McConkey, who many are going to. Maybe it's a Herbert, Palmer, Disley, and then fill it out with all the expensive pieces that nobody's going to, not just the Tampa guys that everyone is going to. So again, different ways to play it. using different quarterbacks, but I certainly think it makes the slate interesting. And the fact that the second game seems much lesser owned seems perfect.
Just one question on the Herbert stuff. Do you guys believe the 17% number? You think it's going to be in that range, the 17%?
I think it might even be like the 12, 13. Like people really just don't want to get buried. Like,
well, I mean, what percent do you play? So let's say it is, I don't know. Well, let's just use the 17 number. I mean, in order to make a move on Herbert, and you got to play him probably at least 25%. So it's like at the 17% number, for me personally, it's hard to really come up with a game plan to make a move on Herbert. So like at 17%, I think the better move, if you don't love him, is just to X his ass out, which I don't know if I'm doing it yet. But if he was like closer to the 10% number, I'd probably have interest in playing him. But if it remains in the upper teens, like you're sacrificing shares of Lamar, Baker, and Kyler to play Herbert. That's the problem.
What I'm hoping for and how I'll handle it are pretty much the same. I'm hoping he's actually like 10 to 12 because just the way it looks, like I said, I definitely think Baker's getting more. I don't really necessarily think Lamar is budging as much as even if Lamar went up some, I think that leads to more people being on that game and some of those Lamar lineups turning into Baker to get an extra upgrade into the lineup. But I'll say it like I always say, and I'll use 12 as the number. If I can get Herbert at 12%, it's like I said, in order to make a move, I make moves in different ways. And just so people know out there, like it's not necessarily, I don't know if it's right. It's right to me and it's worked for me. But if there's 100,000 lineups in the tournament and 12,000 of them are Justin Herbert lineups, I can play 12% Justin Herbert. I'll do it. I'll play 10% because I think those 12,000 lineups, probably 5,000 to 6,000 of them are going to be horrible builds. They're going to max out salary. They're going to use they're going to use him to get McConkey, who's the most popular pairing with him, and then use all the other guys in the exact same lineup. Those are all bad lineups, especially in a 2-game slate with 500K up top. So I can go 10% Herbert, and the field is probably really 5 or 6% good lineups. I have leverage on good lineups, and I still get away with it and keep a significant chunk of my ownership at quarterback on Lamar, Baker, and some on Kyler. But I agree with you, Hoop. It's just that's my way of framing it up.
Everyone does it, their way that works for sure. But for me, like if I'm gonna make the move and play Herbert, like I want to be overweight on him, and like at 17, I just don't know if I can. I just don't see myself getting there.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and obviously both have found plenty of success playing in different ways, and I think that's the beauty of the game. What I was talking about, regardless how good or bad your day goes, we always get another slate, and we get to fight after the same thing again. This is a good one for that reason.
Yep, definitely agree.
All right, take us into the running backs, man. What are you doing with this spot? Talked about it earlier, but Henry, Dobbins, Connor, people just look scared of the Tampa Bay thing. There is going to be some ownership, but it's kind of on this slate, limited versus some of the other positions. Like you can get an Aguilar at wide receiver with almost no ownership, but to get like a 12 or 15% Bucky Irving or somewhere in that range, it almost feels like that's your leverage on this at the running back position, at least. I should say it that way.
It's the toughest or easiest position, I guess, depending on what you do. I mean, it's either the toughest position or the easiest position, because if you take the easy route, you can just get as much Dobbins, Henry, and Connor as you want and just move along and just potentially play those three. And then obviously you're doing something, look to do different things and chalkier type lineups. If you take the more complicated route, it's bringing the Tampa Bay guys into the equation, figuring out what the hell is going to go on there. Talked about it in the opening. Sean Tucker looked really, really good with White out. Bucky Irving didn't look great, but he's looked good this season. And then Rachaad White officially, is he in for sure?
I forget the latest practice report was, but it seems like he's going to
full participant on Saturday. So he's probably going to go too. So these guys are still getting ownership, which is the interesting part. And I'll be curious to see if that holds as well. And curious to get your guys' take on that. But like Rachaad White is showing 20% ownership. Bucky Irving is showing 16% ownership. That is, 35% ownership right there between two guys that are definitely splitting, with potentially a third guy as well who looked better than any of them probably all season. That Sean Tucker dude looked better than White has looked all year. Looked better than Bucky Irving has looked all year. So again, it's another situation for me. If Rachaad White's coming in at 20% and Bucky Irving's coming in at 16, I might just get more wide receivers in that range. So maybe more wide receiver flex, and then maybe just fade all those guys. So something I'm looking at doing there is just being off of them, especially with these big numbers like 20%, 16%. Curious to see if that does hold, and curious to get your guys' take on that. But it's a complicated situation. And I guess the other guy that you could consider, especially if you're going heavy game stacks or going very heavy on Ravens Bucs, is Justice Hill. I mean, there's game scripts where Justice Hill gets a lot of work. You need the Ravens likely playing from behind. So if you're building teams where you think the Bucs win, Bucs playing with a lead, Justice Hill is a perfect guy to bring into the equation, and he's lower owned than those the Tampa Bay guys. So for me personally, the fourth guy I probably bring into the equation is probably Justice Hill before looking at Rachaad White or Bucky Irving. So depends what you do here. Like I said, it could be the easiest position for you to figure out tonight, or a complicated position to figure out, depending on how much of this Tampa Bay stuff you want to get involved with.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit. Title, I'll flip it over to you, but like even Henry and Hill, I mean, we're going to talk about double stacks at running back. Henry Hill's one later. I know people are already talking about Dobbins and Kamani Vidal. He's another guy that they've been mixing in, and you could see that happen. But I guess take us into running back and your thoughts on it, because it does look like it's pretty heavy, just those three guys. And then the secondary, options become the Tampa Bay guys.
Yeah, and I mean, it's rightfully so that they're the three main guys. And I think that's why I'm going to be playing some Herbert, because I'm playing Derrick Henry, I'm playing James Conner, I'm playing Dobbins. Justice Hill is by far my fourth favorites. I mean, every week but two, he's had over a 40% snap share. 1 week, like week 4, they absolutely blow out the Bills, didn't need him much. Last week in week 6, they had the lead most of the game against the Commanders. Obviously, when they have the lead, Derrick Henry will be out there a lot more. In games they're trailing, as we saw week 1 and week 2, Justice Hill outsnapped Derrick Henry. So it's very easy. When you're building the first game or you're game stacking it, if you go all in on the Buccaneers, you think Buccaneers jump out, you think they win the game, you think Ravens play from behind, Justice Hill's a way better play. If you're building it like you think Ravens jump out, then to lean on Derrick Henry, pound the football there, then I'd have less. I'd dock the pass catchers. I wouldn't play as much Justice Hill. I'd go Derrick Henry. Of course, you can go to like Derrick Henry and Justice Hill together. But man, I feel like Derrick Henry has to get in the box early, and then Baker comes back and makes Justice Hill be on the field more. I feel like you need a lot to go right. And I'm with Hoop on. I'm going to be playing a lot of wide receivers and tight ends in the flex today. I'm not going to play too many 3 running back teams, because if you do, I think it's very clear people are going to go Henry, Dobbins, Connor, Buccaneer stuff. I'm Xing Rachaad White. The dude's just not good. Like, Bucky Irving's good. We just saw Sean Tucker be good. They've watched Rachaad White be bad for over a year now. I'm out on him for sure. I think, unfortunately, if you have him in any best ball teams, that is GG's. I like Bucky. The Sean Tucker stuff, too, he looks so good. Bucky's my guy today if I had to pick one on the Buccaneers side. I thought he was better than Rachaad White earlier in the year. I kept saying he was finally going to overtake him. Out of nowhere, Sean Tucker, I think he was an undrafted rookie free agent. He was there last year, didn't get any work. Goes and has a career game. I guess maybe he can do it again. Bucky's the guy that I'll be playing a little bit, but I think they're all going to probably be overowned because I'm just guessing. Everyone's guessing. You guess wrong, you're absolutely dead. Now, you can get paid off in dividends if you are right. I will say I do think we're hot on the ownership, and I could be wrong, but everyone will be guessing which one, and I think a lot of people will come back to, if I have 10 teams, why even mess around and try and pick one Buccaneers guy when I feel a lot better with Connor, Dobbins, Henry, and rightfully so. So, yeah, I don't know. If you have a strong lean into it. Maybe I'll just play Bucky X the other two so I can at least get like 15, 20%. And if he does nothing, just hope that all of them bust. I'm still underweight on the running back room. But you're really guessing. I don't have a strong lean. I'm just hoping White stinks like he usually does, and Bucky's actually good. So I'm leaning in that route. And then Vidal, I don't know, man. What are you doing with them? You're playing them. I know you are.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a better – I mean, I feel better about that spot, to be honest. As much as I'm going to have Dobbins, it's just like a security blanket to that. I think you could play both of them with the defense there. Like that's another way to get different in your Tampa Bay Ravens stacks. If you want to be able to get different, play double running back and the D from the Chargers game, and you could still put a receiver against that. We literally just saw it on a 10-game slate yesterday. The Millie Maker winner in the $10 had the Cincinnati D versus both Njoku and Elijah Moore on Cleveland. So it's like, it can happen. They still put up 15 DST points. That's solid here on a 2-game slate. So I'm certainly interested in that. I think the Justice Hill thing is the interesting one over there at 4,800. Quite the dip off Henry. Henry's been on a tear though. So in non-Lamar lineups, I know people talk about in the chat about playing no Ravens. Definitely don't love that. Like I said, I'll have some overstack the Bucs side and leave Ravens off for the reason of what that would do for you on a 2-game slate, but the majority of my lineups will have Ravens and mixing them in, whether it's Lamar at quarterback, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, Zay, Bateman, the tight end. Like there's just somebody there, and their offense is going to move the ball against Tampa. So definitely think this is a good spot. We talk about Lamar going up against these teams, but at running back, the only other thing I really have to add is like the Buccaneers backfield has people so worried. That's, you got to embrace that. As bad as the matchup is, bad of all that is, if you have a portfolio to work with, it's good to embrace it in something like this on a 2-game slate, because others don't want to touch it is sometimes why you should go there and try and find a way. So I don't have too much else to add. The second game seems pretty clear cut on that, the back and forth, but I think you can put like Dobbins, Connor against each other with one of their defenses would just be another way to handle it, because again, it doesn't even matter. Like this, they're going to get work on the ground. The defense doesn't necessarily matter against that. So yeah, I don't have too much else to add here. Title, anything else to go?
Yeah, one thing, and it's throwing it back to quarterback, but I think it's a fair question. But also with how DraftKings price quarterbacks, we don't even necessarily need them to be. Lamar's $8K, Baker's $68, Kyler's $65, Herbert's a full $1K less at $55. I do like how DraftKings priced that. I don't know the percent, but just look at what happened on yesterday's 10-game main slate. I know there was injuries, etc. Even without injuries, so many of those guys absolutely busted. It was really bad football. Why could not in a 2-game slate? The first game bust
slate, and how other positions matter against it more. Like what that can do for you at 5,500 is the only one even close. He's 1,000 less than the next closest. Here's one, Title. I'll answer it. I would say there's a 13.7% chance as of right now that we see Herbert be on the winning lineup. That's what I would say the numbers would say.
Good answer.
Who knows how it actually shakes out, but that's what, like I said, I'm comfortable coming in around that number or below, because it's not, what's the title line? It's not how often you win. It's how much you win when you are right. Not how often you're right. It's how much you win when you are right. He's probably not right, but it is literally the best matchup he's seen. Everyone talked shit that day when it was Trevor Lawrence day. Finally got a good matchup. Told you, like, it's the only, if he's going to come through, it's going to be the spot. This is what we're saying. It's a risk based off of that. But yeah, right. I got nothing else to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just because it carries on with this conversation. So I just went through and ran some teams, and I like what they did with the pricing. I'll say, like, it's hard to get overweight on Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Like a lot of times these slates, they price them so poorly where you can just easily get way overweight on everyone. I went through and built some teams. I think based on what I'm seeing here, there's a chance, and could be wrong, that either Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry kind of get squeezed a little bit. And I think it could be Derrick Henry, because we're showing 50% ownership on him. And I think that's where people will say, you know what, I want Lamar. I'll just dip off of Derrick Henry. So based on this, and yeah, you have some confidence in that statement as well. I think it has a chance to be Derrick Henry, because we know. Go ahead.
I was just saying that means Dobbins has to be like 85%.
Massive. He's going to be massive. Yeah, just after this, like it's definitely like Dobbins has to be like so highly owned, like crazy highly owned. It just means their ownership, their actual ownership is, lower than the projected ownership where people start building teams and they can't get to as much.
Steam means we think it'll go up. Squeeze means you think it'll go down with other stuff. So
yeah, so I think it's Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry. We're showing 50. Everyone around the industry kind of has 50. I bet it's probably like 40.
Salesman Hoop jumped in the building for a minute and sold our guy Tweezy. He went from no Ravens to Okay, I'll get some Derrick Henry now. I only want him. So shout out Tweezy, shout out Hoopster, getting the sales pitch going. But yeah, that's how you should be thinking about these slates. It's not often, again, why we're not sitting here hard stance like, oh, you got to take these 3 locks today and put them in. That's not what we do here, right? We're trying to talk through the slate, how we see it playing out, and look for our angle in against the field that we're up against. It's not about all the other stuff. It all comes together under one bucket, and that's the key, is how do we beat the field that we're going up against? This is the stuff that we're thinking about. So, Title, going back to you, take us into the wide receiver position. We spent a lot of time at running back, but wide receiver seems pretty cut and dry for what people are doing. The majority are on that first game. And as you know, besides Ladd McConkey, whatever, but even like a Marvin Harrison at 20%, that's nothing really compared to like 50 to 60 on these other guys. He's coming in 1/3 the ownership of these Tampa Bay guys.
Looking at the stone, the 3 that stand out, Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, and Rashad Bateman. Like, I don't want to mess with Aguilar as much, or like James McMillan is now wide receiver 4. Now that Zay Jones is back, how much is he going to eat into Greg Dortch at wide receiver 3 sets? Again, you can mix and match them. They'll be low owned. Fiocco, wide receiver 3 on the Chargers, is getting ownership. Palmer's getting ownership. Ladd, as we see. So the guys that are all sub 30% that are good players that are going to be on the field that can do something, clearly Bateman, Wilson, and Harrison, 2 of those guys are on the same team with what I believe to be the 3rd highest owned quarterback on the slate, and Kyler Murray, which is why I keep coming back to some of this Cardinals stuff. But yeah, so I'll just go team by team. Baltimore, clearly Zay, great play, going to get ownership. I think Bateman's a very strong play. Aguilar, I like him more with Lamar stuff. I doubt I have too much naked Aguilar stuff, because I do feel like if Aguilar gets there, he's probably catching a touchdown, and Lamar's probably with him if he's throwing one to Aguilar. So I like it more in Raven stuff, and I'm going to be playing a bunch of Lamar, so that's how I'll play him. The Tampa side, very, very easy. Godwin's been an absolute monster this year. We do have Godwin 56%, Mike 39. So it's not something to look at right there. Very similar price. Baker, Mike Evans, Sterling Shepard. Baker, Mike Evans, K. Dotton. Leaving out Godwin in Baker stuff, that's a way to get different right there. Obviously, Godwin's been so good this year. Maybe they focus on shutting down Godwin in the slot. Someone else gets there. Going to the Chargers side, yeah, it's the 3 that we talked about. They're getting ownership, though. No Quentin Johnston, so McConkey, probably the highest owned receiver on the slate because of their price. Palmer slid into wide receiver 2 sets without him. And then Fiocco, which I do think Fiocco's ownership, we have 15% catches steam, and I think that 36% Palmer might go down a little bit. So if I think it's like 24% Fiocco, 29% Palmer, which I wouldn't be shocked because of the savings, I think Palmer is a very interesting play in that Chargers receiving room that, again, I think he gets squeezed a bit. Cardinal stuff, I talked about it. The addition of Zay Jones this week does make the wide receiver 3 room a little hairy. I feel confident. Michael Wilson's receiver 2 has looked great. No one's played Marvin Harrison because, well, not nobody, of course, but relative to the slate, because they want to find the extra couple hundred for Evans and Godwin. Zay Flowers is right there for a little cheaper, projects better. And you need to spend that running back because there's only, if you don't want to play Tampa stuff, so then you're priced out of really playing the Harrison stuff. So I'll obviously eat into that.
What is the price on this slate for Trey Palmer? 3,200. So he practiced on Saturday, and it looks like he could be coming back as well to muddy it up a little bit. I know you got Sterling Shepard there for 200 more, but that could be, and obviously McMillan is still there too. But just to say, I had agreed earlier with Hoop on like the Shepard take, and I just saw the Trey Palmer thing just to double check on it. So yeah, interesting for sure. Another guy will be like no ownership that could come back. $3,200. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
What about this one, Hoop? I wanted to send this one over to you. With Dobbins' ownership so high, you got to play the backup because Vegas is going to have to pay a lot of money if Dobbins hits.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one way to go about it. He's going to be very highly owned, but I don't think it's, yeah.
They have enough money. They can pay out a couple.
They'll be fine.
Yeah, I think it's like not anything to do with DFS either, right? Like obviously this guy said the cabal is on Vidal. You got to get on him. They know about it. So I don't know, but the big thing is you got to just know that has no affiliation. Like, if he's 85% owned in DFS, it's because it's a 2-game slate and the spot that he's in and the injuries and all that stuff. You can get a ton of different ways. It doesn't mean everyone is jamming his over props at the sports book. So
Yeah,
you can play Dobbins, no problem. It has nothing to do with Vegas on that one.
Yeah, and this was a comment from a couple people, but Kenny had posted it first. Like, it is crazy. Ladd McConkey is going to be the highest owned wide receiver on a slate where we got Zay Flowers, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr., and it's going to be Ladd McConkey. I don't hate like a team that doesn't even want to pass the ball either. Like, you got a team that doesn't want to pass the ball, and their wide receiver is between like 60 and 70% owned. So I don't hate an underweight approach. It's just, if you go and run an optimizer, McConkey is going to show up on every damn team that you build, just every damn team. So I don't hate going underweight on that.
Good call. And I actually want to comment on something you just said, because I think people should be doing this. And it's not necessarily, again, trust the projections. We have great projections, accuracy, solid, everything, but it's set up where, like, again, you still have to tell your own story and your own thing. So instead of just Xing a guy, which is not what Hoop said to do, I'm just putting this out there because I think a lot of the chat is talking about this and thinking about it. Just dock his projection. Like, make him 9 instead of 13.2 and see what that does for you. Now with Shiptimizer, you can just say, screw this. I'm not taking my 70% that it's given me. Let me make my max exposure 35, cut that in half, and I feel just fine. You're still going to get the 35. Obviously, if it's trying to give you 70, it's definitely giving you the 35 when you cap it. But I will say that, another way to do it is just to play around with it. And again, think about it. If you're docking him, where is it going? It doesn't necessarily just have to go to Palmer, but I'm just saying there's other things that you can do when you're playing around with it. So I think for sure, just something to look at. But anything else there, Hoop? And you can talk about other spots if you want to.
No, not too much else. I mean, I do the Ladd thing though, it's definitely pretty interesting. Or you just cap it too. Like, if you're running optimizer and you're getting 70%, which if you just do a dry run and run it, like I did, I was getting 97% Ladd. So it's going to come in at a very, very high number. Let's say, he's what are we showing? 60, 70%. And you want to take an underweight stance, because if you're doing 150, you're going to need them in some lineups. So to make things work, just cap it at 50. So that's the most I want. Just half my teams to have Ladd. If he does well, half my teams are good. If he sucks, I got another half that are probably live to do something, because the most popular play on the slate busted.
Yeah, these ones keep coming up. And sometimes I just get like a feeling, and just only gut feeling, but like you already know what it's going to be. It's going to be pass interference all night. The Bucs run for like 30 on the ground, but somehow get 3 rushing touchdowns from Bucky or from someone else, Tucker or something like that. Even though they didn't get an ounce on the ground, they just scored the touchdowns that way. And so I think the Tampa Bay Bucs running backs are interesting. Hoop, go back to just wide receiver. Anything else you want to throw out there with it?
Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, is very interesting on this slate. We're showing 22%. When people go and build, I think that has a chance to come down a little bit, just because people are going to play Godwin over him. People are going to play Evans over him. People are going to play Zay Flowers over him. People are playing Ladd McConkey over him at the wide receiver position. So he could come in, I don't know, upper teens, I think, on the slate. And I think that's definitely something that stands out for sure. Has even in the shittiest game scripts, like he finds a way to score touchdowns. So I think he's very interesting. We know the Tampa Bay stuff, like Godwin's going to be very popular. Evans, we kind of talked about the Sterling Shepard situation, could get more complicated, obviously, if Trey Palmer is in the mix as well. So that's something to monitor. Rashad Bateman, cheap play coming with ownership. If you are playing a ton of Lamar, like a lot of Lamar, I would include Aguilar. He tends to get some targets there, and he's coming in at very, very low ownership. We got Semi, like we talked about. Josh Palmer, I think, is a fine option at 44. Michael Wilson, and I guess maybe a little bit of Greg Dortch. I'll be playing a lot of these wide receivers, like I said, over some of the cheap running backs, over Justice Hill, over all the Bucs guys. I'm going to play all these wide receivers over those guys. It just works better with roster construction. So, that's where I'm at wide receiver wise.
I'm looking at combinations too. And one thing I like here is Harrison over one of the Bucs guys. Like Harrison, I know he's still coming in with some ownership, but if he's going to be like 20 to Godwin 60, I like that. And I really like Harrison more with Kyler Murray because he reminds me more of a Jamar Chase style where if he has a big day, it's going to be tied to Kyler. But I think you can offset that a little bit and do some Lamar Harrison Jr. lineups because it's saying who would be most likely to beat Kyler Murray and fill it in for the Evans spot. Evans or Godwin are going to be in a lot of Lamar and Baker Mayfield lineups. So going to that, or even like a Baker Evans Harrison and fill in Harrison for your Godwin spot in that build. Like little things like that I'm looking to do, just another way to build it differently, but still find guys that are in decent spots. And again, I know Harrison's not in the best spot necessarily, but on a 2-game slate, I care way less about these report cards than I do on a main slate because there's only so many spots to go. And I care way more about leverage and game theory versus what the field's doing. And we know the field is playing Tampa Bay, and you know what the field is doing in a lot of positions here this slate. And that's why we talked through it this way. So I don't have much else to add at that point. The Ladd McConkey thing is obviously a little bit over the top, but if you've got him, his projection is legit, then that makes sense. If you don't like his projection, then you can cap him or turn his projection down. So Title, I'll go back to you, tight ends and anything else you want to talk about there.
First, do you guys have I talked about the Buccaneer stuff. I went out there and said Bucky if I had to pick one, and I'm not playing white. Do you guys, I know, Tambo, you're probably going to mix and match, just like you're knowing football. If you had a guess, do you have leans on these guys? You're going to have more of one than the other stuff, or are you just mixing and matching?
I like Bucky. I think the ownership on Bucky and Rachaad White flips. Not that changes much. It's like 16 and 20, so it's fine. I think more people will like Bucky. The ones that are, the people with the most DFS experience will forgive that event. Literally had a full rant on it last week because remember how Bucky was so bad? Oh, he was terrible. He got 20 carry. He had every opportunity in the world, and Sean Tucker got 30 on top that could have been some of Bucky's. Like, it was a nut spot. This is not the best matchup spot, but again, on a 2-gamer, the ones that are ignoring what I am, a lot of the matchup stuff, and just saying it's 2 games, those 3 other running backs are super popular. I can go there. I prefer Bucky for sure.
Yeah. The problem is all 3 of these guys can catch passes. They used Rachaad White a lot in the passing game last year. Bucky's been a great pass catcher in college. Great pass catcher. I would say Bucky's the best. Sean Tucker is a little fella too that is very agile, explosive. He can catch passes too. So unfortunately, it's not like Hill Henry where if they're down, it's clearly going to be this. All of them can catch passes. So I would still think Bucky.
Yeah, I was just saying, you would just maybe bring up another point. I don't know how we spend more time on 2 gamers than 10 gamers, it feels like. But it is funny. There's more theory and stuff. I think that's what it is. Yeah. But the thing you said too, remember the stat, forget just Lamar 22-1. Remember the Derrick Henry stat. He literally pops over 6 years. It's a serious sample size of like a 5 or 6 point projection boost when you have them winning. So if you believe in the Lamar 22-1 thing, or just the numbers, Vegas, the line, whatever, and you think Ravens win this game, that is something to be said for Derrick Henry. We only have him projected for 16 right now. That's about his average, because it's a median projection, but he should be leaning more towards that ceiling. And so that would be something to play around with too. Just when you're messing around on a 2-gamer, sort of all these rules can go out the window and you can do some of that stuff. So I certainly think that is something. And then Kenny just brought up something I wanted to talk about too. Mike Evans. Another thing about that, Mike Evans, he's saying might actually come in lower. It is possible.
I think so. Yeah, I agree. Definitely agree with that.
I don't know how much lower. I don't agree with like 20, for example, because it's just not going to happen. And another thing about earlier today, when I ran it with Sims, the Sims really like Mike Evans too. So when people know that everyone's on Godwin, it flips it over to him. So he's going to get a boost naturally for the higher stakes guys and the ones using these expensive sim sites. That's what's going to happen.
I think upper 20s is realistic, like 28, 29 range. It's not going to be
jam him. I mean, he's one of the best slate at 29%. Then you think Godwin's going to be 50 or something. Then
I think Godwin's got massive ownership. I think Zay Flowers comes in way over Evans, and then McConkey definitely. I mean, you're between Zay Flowers, Godwin, and McConkey, they're going to average like 60% ownership. Those 3 dudes that are, Flowers is probably 50 range. Godwin's probably 60. McConkey could get up to 70. They're just not, the spots run out. Like the wide receiver spots run out. Now, I guess obviously you can play him in flex too, but you're talking about another premium spend. And then, I know we didn't talk a lot about FanDuel, but you look at FanDuel where Evans is 8,200 like probably, again, I haven't messed around on there a ton, but probably even more so over there getting squeezed.
I agree on the FanDuel stuff. The other thing about DK is your point earlier, Hoop. The guy that has to get squeezed, in my opinion, is what you said earlier. It's got to be Derrick Henry, because how do you fit Evans in these game stacks? Is you don't play Derrick Henry, and because people love J.K. Dobbins, which I get it, so that's going to already be a thing, and they have to play at least two. I think it is okay. I can get away with Justice Hill. Okay, I can get away with James Conner. That just makes it so that they can fit Mike Evans. So I think you're on the right number, and I think that's why on DraftKings it squeezes it that way. And you can't spell Dante without date. And this guy's over here talking about if he had 10 women to pick from, it's easy to cross some off. But with only 2 choices on a Friday night, I have to weigh things a little bit more. That is correct, my friend. That's
very good. I mean, very good analogy. It's a great way to break it down, and it's the that honest truth. It really is.
Very true.
Why you gotta lock in your target early in the evening before they disappear. You know, identify and attack.
Yeah.
Don't actually attack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tight end position, Tambo.
Tight end, yeah.
I think it's, again, ownership is kind of tough because like the Cade Otton stuff, I feel like he has to be higher owned than 26%. Again, I think 2 or 3 running backs won't be that common in the flex, especially if you think Henry gets squeezed. People don't want to go Tampa. James Conner, Dobbins would be the highest. But if you want to play Baker, you're going to play one of Edmonds or Godwin. If people are going Lamar, they're probably going Zay. If they're going Herbert, it's a lot less people. No, then they probably don't need the savings. Maybe they go McBride. If you're going Kyler Murray and Harrison, though, that you're probably going McBride there. But you also need value. And a guy that's always on the field in the game people want to target. People, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. I think they're the 2 lowest owned tight ends of the 5 you can play. I'm only playing Disley, McBride, Otton, and then one of those 2. McBride's the clear best, but you have to pay a little more. He's going to come with ownership, rightfully so. Good matchup. And I think it's clearly Otton because Will Disley, he stinks, but he's cheap, so he's naturally going to get ownership because he fills things out. People don't want to play the Chargers passing game as much, so outside of Ladd and the Fiocos they'll go to. Andrews and Likely, they split snaps. They want to go Zay Flowers a little more. Henry getting ownership. I think I'm going to lean into that. And Isaiah Likely's outsnapped Mark Andrews most of these games. And I know Mark Andrews did get there last week for a touchdown. He still looks slow to me. Isaiah Likely, I think, is a monster. I'm going to lean into the snap share in Likely's favor. I think he's a better tight end. I think he's a better football player. We're showing lower ownership. He's the guy I'm going to get different. I'm clearly playing Naughton because he fits builds, makes sense in Baker stuff. Trey McBride, I think, is clearly the best tight end. And it's a lot easier to leave salary when you're playing Trey McBride. Why can't he outscore Zay Flowers, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison? We haven't seen that upside as much this year, but he's still definitely got 8 for 100 and 2 touchdowns in his bag. And for those people that like to pick on, like, where does this defense get beat most? Tight ends do beat up the Chargers in the middle of the field. So, yeah, only 5 tight ends I'm playing today.
Yeah, Hoop, I'll kick it to you on the same spot there. What do you got?
Yeah, basically same talking point. I really am interested in the Ravens guys just because they're coming in the lowest owned, and Lamar Jackson is the premier quarterback on the slate. And, the fact that the highest owned quarterback, like it's hard to get leverage situation. We know Zay Flowers is getting ownership. We know Bateman's getting ownership. I can go to tight end, and these guys are ranking 4th and 5th in ownership at the position. Like, that's a spot I want to expose. So I actually really like Mark Andrews as a play straight up to him. I hope the ownership remains relatively low because I think it's the best way to build Lamar Jackson teams if you're trying to get a little bit different. And it's cheap. Like, it's cheap too. It's like $4K. It's like a full punt price tag. And the last 2 weeks have been a little bit better for him. Like I said, he had the 4 catches, I think, back-to-back weeks, and the touchdown last week. So interested there, interested in Likely. And then, yes, I'm going to play some Disley. I mean, at 2,800, he's got goose egg floor. Like, he can clearly go out there and get 0. I'll play some Otton. But McBride's another name, though, that I think could come back a little bit. We're showing 36 when you go to build teams. Like, it's like you can't spend everywhere, And I think people might be willing to sacrifice him a little bit. So I don't think that 36% number holds. I think he comes back a little bit. But similar to title, I'm going to be playing, those 5 main guys. Double question we obviously always get is double tight end. We get those questions on main slates. On a 2-game slate, yes, you can play double tight end.
Double tight end on the Ravens. Imagine they both been on the field a bunch together too. Just limit your exposure. The other thing is both of them are likely the exact same price as Bateman. Andrews gives you $300 more. Maybe it's a defense swap where you just leave the money, but just to say certainly something there. These 2 cheapies fit really well, make some nice lineups, especially for higher stakes, smaller fields. But I definitely think they're going to be popular and even somewhat together. So just one of those things to look at.
Yeah, good point from Nades too. Like I agree with him. I think some of that McBride ownership goes to Otten for $2,000 cheaper. It's just we'll need the savings. So yeah, I bet Otten's more upper mid 30s, and I would bet McBride's probably mid 20s. So good point there.
Hoops burner, but yeah, you need a bigger portfolio for this. I think or if you're just like playing one lineup and you want to take a risk and be different, I get it. But I'm doing that with 150 lineups. I'm not doing that when I got one lineup. So I know what your question was. We just talked about it. Don't let me forget this, by the way. The next show we do, we need a giveaway off the top hoop. And as we always think of what should the giveaway be? What do people need to put in the chat? Give us your best theory. Not right now. Don't do this right now, but don't let me forget your best theory on what happened to our guy Double D hand building his lineups from his phone at the factory in the I think he said he was on a crane.
Yeah, he was in a crane.
But man, shout out Double D, man. We've been missing this guy. So
yeah,
don't let me forget that for a show. That's a great one to get some theories around what we think happened to him. Title.
That's our guy.
Anything else? I don't have much on tight ends. I already talked through quite a bit of it. I like the Cade Otton ownership going up versus the McBride going down. I think that's a good call. Disley obviously just fits the spot. I think you want to be stacking these guys though. Like instead of just one-offing them to make everything work from that first game, that's what a lot of people are doing. I'm going to be looking more to use them within that game. Like a Kyler Murray, James. So someone, I think it was Nades, asked earlier about it in the chat about separating a group with Ladd, Godwin, and Zay and playing at most 2 of 3. That's fine if you want to do that. I think that's definitely an option. But what if you have a Kyler Murray, James Conner, McBride, Disley lineup?
But why would you want to separate that group, I guess? Like what's
he's just saying because they're going to be the highest owned guys on the slate, and then you're going to have a quarterback that's popular with them. I get what he's saying. I just don't want to rule myself out. And I think, going back to it, there's certainly other alternatives where you don't need to you're just not going to have to rule against it if you build your lineups in other ways. And I just gave an example of how you could do it. So probably turn heel on that.
I'm with you on that. I think the tight end position is a great spot, though. You can make a pivot from, like you mentioned, the Bateman's down a little to Andrews. That's not a big one, but Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison down to Trey McBride, Godwin down to Trey McBride, even Mike Evans and them down to Cade Otton. Like, it's a 2-game slate. Do I love that stuff? You leave 4K on the table, you probably have probably more of a 2v2 when you leave some money on the table. But why couldn't Cade Otton outscore one of these wide receivers? Why can't Trey McBride be the highest scoring pass catcher on the slate? I guess he's the main one. The Trey McBride's the world. I could pivot from any receiver on the slate. Damn near anyone on this slate in the flex. And I can drop down to Trey McBride because he has that type of upside. Will Disley doesn't. I don't know if I would say Otton or Andrews likely have it, but I likely did it week 1. So why doesn't he have it at the end of the day in a 50-point total?
I guess there's one last thought for me, then I'll let you talk. If you have anything else to add, defenses, I think we'll just go through the ownership and quickly do it. But I would say that the Lamar, Derrick Henry, McBride lineups, that trio would get you different up the guts, meaning everyone's going to have Godwin, Evans, Zay, like that mid-range of 65 to 8K, call it receivers, even those are the highest might be 7,400. My point being, as a way to get different, you could do something like that if those are the 3 highest scorers on the slate that you just need to have, and fill it in around that with some of those mid-range wide receivers and cheapies versus the common build a lot of people will have title.
For sure, 100%. And in terms of defenses, play the Bucs against Lamar if you're playing Lamar. Play Ravens against Baker if you're playing Baker. Like, those are little stuff you can do to get different within the stuff. as you see a lot of times, a punt return in the Cincy game, first play of the game. The defense meant absolutely nothing. Trent Irwin just ran one back 100 yards. The London game we're on the show, Parker Washington, 96-yard punt return. Defense didn't do anything. It was just a random punt return play. Defense gets rewarded. Like, it's so volatile. Unfortunately, DraftKings won't go to another flex or something. I'd be down for it. 2-game slate, though? Probably not, because one of these defenses probably will outscore the others, and there'll be a necessity. And then a random 75% of the field are dead because they didn't get the right 4-way coin flip right. But on 2-game slates, it's actually probably better to get more uniques up top.
And I would say Shiptimizer has the option. Usually people just turn on allow defense versus quarterback on these 2-game slates, but just allow it versus everything. You could literally have 6 guys from the other side or 5 guys and be against the opposite defense. So don't limit at all. Don't set that rule. It's just not something you need on a slate like this. You can let anything could happen. It could be Lamar with 4 other dudes, and the Bucs D is just the better D on the slate. It's just the way it happens. So it's completely random, but little things like that. I guess the best way to say it is just don't rule yourself out of having the winning lineup by doing that. Hoop, I'll go to you. Any final thoughts at defense or anything else you want to talk about there?
I mean, on these 2-game slates, I just tend to include everybody in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I don't want to have like 0 of a defense just because it is just so damn random, like just so random. And I don't want to exclude a defense. And like you said, they take the opening kickoff back for a touchdown and your night's over. Like that's not fun. That's not fun at all. So if you're building a lot of teams, just, make sure to include them all, and I'll actively make sure I include them all. If I build my teams and I'm getting like none of a defense, I'm gonna put in there I want minimum of 8% or something, just so I have some shares in there of each defense. It's a very volatile, high variance position.
Yeah, and I would say this too is you can mess around with the ownership. We're gonna mess around with it more. We'll get finals up later on, but we've kind of had this take at every single position. It's just random, but I would definitely have this take. I think the Ravens D comes down and the Chargers goes up. And mainly because of the Dobbins ownership and how many people just will say, screw it, let me just pair that together on the other side. So Dobbins with Cardinals D is one that I would love, even if you're overstacking the first game, just because Herbert, especially if you think he sucks or you're playing a limited number of them, it's not like you're killing your other lineups. You're not even using D versus quarterback in very many. You can do that too. But if you're not on him at all, like I'm sure Hoop, if you're fading Herbert tonight, I think it would be great to have some lineups because you're going to have a bunch of Dobbins for a good reason. Some are even going to be locking him tonight. Just say, forget it. If he's going to be 75 or 80% owned, just give me him. And people want to play for injuries. It happens. We've seen the Millie Maker ship the night Chubb originally went down. Nice to see him back in action yesterday. Sort of the way the world works. One thing comes back, the other goes down. Amari Cooper and Chubb, good games. Deshaun out for the life, maybe. Who knows? Like come back as a backup or something. Unfortunately, it sucks to see that. But yeah, that's something where tonight you can just play Dobbins. You're going to have Cardinals D against Dobbins if you lock, and you're playing all the defenses. So I like that play quite a bit. Another way to do it.
Agree with you. Yeah, definitely. Especially that sort of combination. If you are underweight or fading Herbert, like that makes even more sense to do stuff.
That's what it's all about. The little stuff like Tambo's saying, the little pairings that people want to shy away from or the hand build, they won't do it. That's what gets you to the top without getting, okay, let me play Tyron Wallace today on this 2-gamer and let's hope he catches a 50-yard bomb. Like the combinations, I'd rather play Ravens D against my Baker Mayfield, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Sterling Shepard, and Otten team than I would play these wide receiver 4s, etc., because anything can happen if you're on the field.
In the mix with another good point. Last chance to get in on the Kyler train, man. This is the Call of Duty's coming out next week, so get on Kyler while you can. It's one spot, but I think it was a good show. I mean, we're gonna have everything covered just so people see it on the slate. I know we went long, but I'm fine with this, Hoop. I think just set it up. We're gonna have Showdown up for NFL on the site. We'll have projections, ownership will all be loaded into Shiptimizer. We're going to have the Stone, the Core Report, Player Pool, Slate Plan, all for this second game, Chargers at Cardinals with the bigger prize pools. You can apply the other stuff with the original Showdown slate if you are playing 3 slates tonight, but most focus is going to be on the 2-gamer. We'll have our projections and ownership. We'll have the Stone. You guys have been looking at the Stone the whole time, so you got a bit of the cheat sheet, but the optimals and the adjusted ownership will be up. The Core Reports, the Player Pool, the Slate Plan, just a smaller version of Player Pool and the Slate Plan. Be good to go for you guys to check it all out. And right now, talk to me. Don't even need a special code. You can go right to the site. $85. It's usually $99, so it's on special, but that's all access across the board, including Shiptimizer for all the sports we cover. So it's an optimizer and all that content you see on the site to get set up there. So anything else, Title, you got? Final thoughts?
Hey, ready to get some of that money I lost back today. Let's have a day.
I'm trying to. How do I get the equity? The separation of what I could have had or wanted to have versus what you don't get. So
you'll forget about after you ship today, Tambo. You got it.
I like that. We'll clip that if that goes through. Any final thoughts for you, my friend?
Yeah, all our content will be up nice and early over at ShipItNation.com. It always is. On this slate, obviously, we'll cover the 2-game slate in full and then also the Showdown slate as well. So you want to get over Ship It Nation. Everything will be up later this afternoon. I'm doing all my stuff right after this. So now is a great time to get in. NBA, man, I know I keep saying it, but don't pay the big price tag for NBA. It's like just crazy that it just kills me that people are going to go out and spend $90 a month on an NBA product. They're going to have the assumption that they're guaranteed to be a profitable DFS player because they're paying the $90 a month because they want to, support somebody that they trust in the industry. No, just don't do that. Like, we have it fully covered here. Like, everything you need to have success at DFS for an affordable price tag. Don't pay the $90 a month just for NBA. We got our guy Rio. Rio goes from morning through the last game, grinding NBA in the Discord, taking questions, updating his content, brought on BJ, got a lot of guys in Discord, Titles in there as well. Just please do me that favor and don't pay the big price tag for NBA. Just don't. And even if you don't sign up for us, just don't pay the other people the big bucks.
That's it. Yeah, I'm going to show. That's the thing. We're going to show you. I think people would pay $90 for this course. It's a 2-hour course that teaches you NBA DFS, even if you know nothing. It comes completely free with the membership. So when you sign up for what you actually signed up for, that's just the throw-in. You get all the education courses, NFL, PGA, MLB, MMA, NBA, more to come. And then for NBA, you're getting Showdown, the projections, all the other stuff there and more. So now's the time to join. Go to the site, ShipItNation.com. If you don't want to join right now, like Hoop said, that's fine. But 85 is going to be the best deal around the industry, including the NBA optimizer, plus all the other stuff for NFL. But if you want to just sign up for the NFL course, you can still do that as well. Just your email, completely free to sign up. That's going to do it for this one, guys. For Hoop, Title, and for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.